Marines in the streets. Immigration sparks conflict. State and nation clash. Welcome to AI News Brew, your source for objective, fact-based news from around the world. Today, we're diving into a developing situation that's sending shockwaves through the American political landscape. The deployment of U.S. Marines to Los Angeles amid immigration protests has ignited a fierce legal and constitutional battle between federal and state authorities. Let's set the stage. On June 7, 2025, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, conducted a series of raids across Los Angeles County. These operations, part of the Trump administration's intensified immigration enforcement efforts, resulted in approximately 45 arrests, including that of David Huerta, a local service employees international union, SEIU, president. The raids sparked immediate and intense protests throughout the city. As demonstrations escalated over the next few days, President Trump took the extraordinary step of deploying 700 Marines from the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, along with 2,000 additional National Guard troops to Los Angeles. This move brought the total federal presence in the city to a staggering 4,700 troops. The deployment has raised serious legal and constitutional questions. At the heart of this controversy is the Posse Comitatus Act, or PCA. This long-standing law prohibits federal military personnel, including Marines, from enforcing domestic policies or acting in law enforcement roles. There are, however, exceptions to this rule, primarily through the Insurrection Act. The Insurrection Act allows the president to deploy military forces domestically under specific circumstances, to suppress insurrections, enforce federal laws when faced with unlawful obstructions, or to protect constitutional rights when states fail to act. But here's the catch. It requires a presidential proclamation ordering dispersal before deployment. The Trump administration has justified the Marine deployment by citing obstruction of ICE operations at the Edward R. Roybal Federal Building protests. They claim that the protests created impracticable conditions for ICE operations under a specific provision of federal law. However, California officials strongly disagree with this interpretation. California Governor Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass have vehemently opposed the federal intervention. The state has filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, alleging violations of federal law. California's Attorney General argues that the deployment violates the law requiring gubernatorial consent for National Guard federalization. This situation is unprecedented in recent history. The last time Marines were deployed domestically was during the 1992 Los Angeles riots, and that was under a clear invocation of the Insurrection Act. This current deployment marks the first time Marines have been used for immigration-related protests, raising concerns about the potential normalization of military policing in civilian matters. The conflict extends beyond just the Marine deployment. The use of National Guard troops has also come under scrutiny. Typically, military assistance in domestic matters falls under the Defense Support of Civil Authorities, or DSCA, framework. This allows for military support only upon formal request from civil authorities for disasters or law enforcement support. However, in this case, it appears that standard protocols were not followed. As of June 10, 2025, the situation remains tense. A pending injunction seeks to remove the Marines under the Posse Comitatus Act, with a hearing scheduled for June 12th. The state maintains that property damage and protests don't meet the Insurrection Act's threshold of armed rebellion, while federal authorities argue that the scale of the protests justifies their actions. This standoff between federal and state authorities goes beyond just immigration policy. It strikes at the heart of state sovereignty and federal authority, potentially setting precedents for future federal interventions in state affairs. The outcome of this conflict could have far-reaching implications for the balance of power between states and the federal government. As we wrap up, it's clear that this situation is far from resolved. The deployment of Marines to Los Angeles has opened a Pandora's box of legal and constitutional questions. How the courts interpret the limits of federal power, the applicability of the Insurrection Act, and the rights of states to refuse federal military intervention will shape the future of federal-state relations in the United States. We'll be keeping a close eye on developments as they unfold. This has been AI News Brew, bringing you the facts and context you need to understand this complex and evolving story. Thank you for listening, and a special thanks to those who support our independent research and publications. Remember to follow AI News Brew for the latest updates on this and other important stories. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.